What's up, you guys? America, and welcome back to my channel. No, you grow up. And it has been a very long time since I've said that. So I'm back from my longest hiatus ever, and I had to get one more video in before this year was over. So we're going to take a look at my top 10 TMNT figures from 2024. This year was so packed with awesome figures. This is actually going to be a top 20 video, but I'm going to group the figures that came in 11 through 20 into two groups of 5. So I'm going to have my first 5 out and then my second 5 out. So I won't really rank them 11 through 20. We'll just kind of take a quick look at the figures that were just outside of my top 10. Now, before we start this list, I'm also going to go over the lines that I have not been collecting for TMNT. There's been so much that's come out in the last couple years for TMNT that it's just impossible to keep up with everything, especially if you collect other things outside of TMNT, which I do. I honestly spend more money on comics than I do action figures, even though if you looked around, you would probably think it was the other way around. So I never went in on the Motu Origins crossover line. At this point, I can't really call it a regret because I absolutely can't afford to collect any more than I am right now, but the more figures that come out for this line, the better it is to me. I saw both of the first 2 waves on shelf, and I didn't grab either of them because that's where I really started drawing hard lines in the sand with what I was going to collect. I also didn't go in on the Joy Toy line, and that's another line that kind of falls into the same category as the Motu Origins line for me. As people start to get those figures and just talk about how awesome they are, I am a little bit bummed that I didn't go in on those figures. I've also gotten a lot stricter on what I collect for the NECA and Super 7 lines, so there's a few figures I passed on for Super 7. I didn't go in on Gorilla. I didn't get like the Shredder Repaint or the Flock Splinter, and I still haven't gotten my Wave 11 figures yet that I ordered from Big Bad Toy Store, but the only 2 I got from that wave are Rat King and the Rappin' Mike figure. And then for what they've shown off, it looks like I'm kind of done with Super 7 for the foreseeable future. And then as far as NECA is concerned, I didn't get any of like the variant figures. So outside of Usagi figures, I didn't get any black and white variants. I passed on that like battle damage last Ronin Turtle figure. And then the one figure I still don't have in hand from this year is the Fury Toys, Rage Toys, whatever it is now, the Not Mikey figure. I ordered mine from 5K Toys and it still hasn't hit yet, so that figure will be pushed to next year's list. Stick around to the end of this video and I'm going to talk about some of the awesome TMNT Christmas presents I got this year. I definitely want to give a quick shout out to all the people that got that stuff for me. Without further ado, let's take a look at the figures that didn't quite make it into my top 10, and then we'll take a look at my top 10 figures. Alright guys, so these would be the 5 figures that I would consider to be the second 5 out of my top 10. In other words, it's my figures that I would rank 16th through 20th. Now, there's 2 figures here that were in my top 10 for the halfway point of the year, and that would be the Not Splinter and then the last Ronin Rat figure. 2 really great figures for sure, but they're just figures that I've fallen less in love with over time. Whenever I do these lists, it's always about how I feel now in the moment, and without a doubt, there's some figures that get the recency bias bump. So these are probably the 2 figures that suffered the most from that. They fell from my top 10 to barely being inside my top 20, but this was just a pretty loaded year for figures. Super 7 Zach is an awesome figure. He wasn't in my top 10 for the first half, but he was probably just outside of that. Awesome paint on him. I really like the metallic looking paint on him. I know that's really more in line with like the toon version of him that came out for the Playmates line and not the regular release. But regardless, I like that figure a lot. Glow in the Dark Scumbug, one of my favorite Glow in the Dark figures from the year. I love the regular Scumbug. He was in my top 10 for this first half of the year. Really good mold, really good job on him. One of Super 7's better figures for sure. Add in the Glow in the Dark. Of course I'm gonna love it. And then rounding out these figures is the NECA Tatsu figure. And this is a figure that was on everybody's most wanted list. It's a figure we all needed to really wrap up our live action lines. From here, I can't really imagine they give me anything that I want from the first movie. The Kevin Eastman Garbage Man figure was a figure I didn't even know I wanted until it was released. So I did go in on that, but I didn't open that figure. So without a doubt, this was the best live action figure for me for the year. But take that with a grain of salt because the live action line is pretty much dead at this point. It looks like we're just getting rehashes going forward. So like I said, this Tatsu might be close to the end of the line for me. A lot of people complained about the likeness. I think it's a pretty good job. I really don't see what everybody's complaining about. Again, didn't crack my top 10, but was one of my favorite figures from the year for sure. Alright, so these are the first 5 figures out of my top 10. Or my 11th through 15th ranked figures. And this is where things really got tough for me. It was fairly easy to sort out my 16 through 20 figures, but it was really hard for me to not put any of these figures in my top 10. Looking back on my top 10 list for the last 2 years, I think any of these 5 figures probably would have made top 10 list for those 2 years. But I think that 2024 has been the best year for figures that we've had so far for the modern era. We've definitely had a lot of heat, and you're going to see that when we get to the top 10. clearly there's going to be some bias involved there. But getting back to these figures, I think every single one of these is great. I already talked about the Super 7 Scumbug a little bit, but looking at the regular version, its paint job is just excellent. I think it's one of Super 7's best painted figures. They nailed it with those eyeballs. I feel like that's the key to that figure. He's one of my favorite original Playmates molds. They nailed those eyes, and I feel like that's one of the most important parts of that figure. He's another one that fell out of my top 10 from the first half of the year, and he actually fell past some figures that I had ranked lower than him. Same with the Business Suit Casey. I had him ranked 5 at my top 10 list halfway through this year, and he is now just outside my top 10. I probably would rank him my 11th, maybe my 12th figure. It's hard to say because, like I said, these 5 figures are all great figures. They just didn't make the cut. I think that mold is greatly improved from the original version. I guess the only thing to compare it to is the head sculpt, but it is much better. A couple more figures from the Toon line. The Slash Remaster is just an excellent figure. It is greatly improved from the original version. Definitely not my favorite version of Slash, but this figure in particular is just very good. Just shows how far NECA has come over the last few years, and it really shows what's kind of set them apart from Super 7. I feel like Super 7 hasn't really changed at all to where you can see a great difference in the development that NECA's had. So even though we didn't have this Rat for the first half of the year, I did have the Mikey in Disguise on my top 10 list. And one of my complaints when those figures came out is they didn't give us the original versions from this first season. They gave us the jackets that came later down the line. Super annoying. I had to buy a second 2-pack to get it, but this is the one I wanted. So getting the version I wanted, you would have thought it would be enough to keep in the top 10, but he might be the figure that's argued with the Business Suit Casey as my 11th spot. Really like that figure. Really love the first season of the show. Really fun figure, but again, just falling outside my top 10. And the last figure that I'm going to talk about that fell outside of my top 10 is the Playmates vs. Sketch Turtles. These were probably one of my biggest surprises of the year. Something I never thought I wanted an action figure for. Something that I never thought a company like Playmates would give us. I definitely thought it would be something like NECA. And NECA actually did give us the turtles that came before this one. So Eastman drew the original first turtle, and then Peter Laird drew one. I actually didn't open my NECA 2-pack, and if I did, they probably still wouldn't have cracked my top 20. But this little guy from Playmates, like I said, it just surprised me. It just has so much charm. It's just so fun. I almost didn't even get this set, but I saw him at Target. I saw all 4, so I'm like, I'll just grab them. And like I said, I was just shocked how much I actually like these figures. They're just very charming and very well done, and it just shows Playmates can still make fun action figures at an excellent price point when they want to. If you can make something that's just fun and enjoyable, that's really what I'm looking for. So great job for Playmates on that one. All great figures, but now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes. We're going to get into my top 10 figures of the year. So kicking off this official top 10 countdown, my 10th favorite figure from the year is the Super 7 Triceraton figure. We waited on this wave for a very long time. I think it was almost 3 years when it was all said and done from when it was first shown to when we actually got it in hand. And the wait was well worth it because I think we got one of Super 7's best figures from this wave. You've heard me say this phrase a million times, bigger is not necessarily better, but with these Super 7 figures, bigger is usually better for me. The bigger, beefier figures have tended to be my favorites, and that's where this Triceraton falls. I really like his accessories that he has. I like the blade that he has on his gauntlet. That's one thing the original Playmates figure didn't have that pretty much every other iteration does. So it's awesome they threw that in there. And then I really like his breathing apparatus too. In the comics, Triceratons can't ever breathe properly on Earth, so it's cool they threw that in there as well. And it's just a great figure. The joints are really tight on it. Feels really good. Doesn't feel like they're going to get loose like a lot of the other bigger figures. I feel like he's one that's going to hold up well over time. Great figure to finally get in hand. Coming in at number 9 is my Super 7 Duncan Don figure. And this is a figure that I honestly didn't have a lot of anticipation for. I love all the turtle variant figures. I know I might be in the minority in that aspect. I love the main line too, but I just have an affinity for the variant figures. Duncan Don was never one that I had, and clearly nobody ever had the white jersey version when we were kids. But when I got this figure in hand, it was actually a lot of fun. The hoop that it comes with is awesome. The fact that you can use his bow staff to make the post for it is really cool. The backboard can be used as a shield, which is also awesome. The paint's really good on this figure, especially for Super 7. The one negative about this figure, it is absolutely criminal that it does not come with a flight stand. I feel like it is mandatory for a figure like this, but that's really my only complaint with this figure. I wouldn't call this Super 7's best figure, but I would definitely call it one of its most fun figures. So coming in at number 8 is my NECA Mirage Rat King. When this figure was shown, down, I figured it was going to make the top 10 list of whatever year it came out in for sure. I honestly thought it would be a contender for figure of the year. This is definitely my favorite version of the Rat King. In the original Mirage comic, he's just like super nasty and mangy and gross, and this figure just nailed that. As far as the figure's concerned, the paint is very, very, very good, especially for NECA. And I know I've said this like a million times, but it just seems like they put a lot more effort into the paint on these comic figures than they do for the Toon line. There is a lot of detailed line work on this figure, and it is all very crisp and sharp. There's a lot of good shading, and I do think it's one of NECA's best figures of all time. If I were to just be ranking figures objectively, it probably would fall inside my top 5, but I'm definitely somebody that ranks with bias, and this just isn't a character that I have a lot of nostalgia for, so that's what hurts it in my rankings. It's no fault to this figure. This is an excellent figure, probably one of not just NECA's best of all time, but one of the best figures of the year for sure. Great figure. This guy's been pretty easy to find. High recommend from me. Grab him if you see him. Coming in at number 7 on my list is the Playmates Remastered figures. And these are figures that probably surprised me the most out of any this year. Like most people, I was very put off when I saw the pockmarks. Without a doubt, it's a very unnecessary add to these figures. But looking past that, everything else about these figures is great. Could the articulation be better? Absolutely. But is it a great improvement from the original figures? Yes. If these figures just had an ankle rocker instead of an ankle swivel, and then a hip swivel and a bicep swivel, and then didn't have the pockmarks, they probably would have been in contention for my favorite figures of the year. Just like the original Sketch Turtles, these figures just have a lot of charm. They pretty much did the same thing the Super 7 figures did for me. They do hit you with those same exact feels as the original figures, but they just have their modern touch, and I just love these figures so much. The one thing Playmates does have when they do it right is charm. Like this, the one thing they always had, their figures are just so fun, so ridiculous, and these figures just nailed it. Again, are they perfect? Absolutely not, but did they do it for me? Yes, they are great. They're better than I expected them to be. I had a lot of fun playing with these guys, and I do think these are very special figures. I do still think Playmates could do it a little bit better, but these do just show you they can do things right when they want to. And I hope this isn't just a one and done. I hope we do see a Shredder, some other figures down the line. I'm pretty sure they tease some things, but even if we don't ever get anything else this good from Playmates again, you know, these figures along with the Sketch Turtles and the last Ronin figure they put out just shows that they can do something special, and they can do it at a price point that works for them, and that's what will make the difference. That's how they can compete with these modern companies, is doing something fun that people want at a great price point. I know they're going to keep coming hard with the remolds, but I really hope this just shows them that people do want figures like this, and I hope Playmates keeps going forward in this direction. Alright, so I'm going to do something a bit controversial here. I legitimately can't decide which one of these figures that I like better. So for my 6th and 5th spot, I'm giving it to both versions of the Super 7 Wingnut and Screw Loose. I think this Wingnut sculpt is one of Super 7's best figures of all time. I don't know how far into the line the Horseman went, but if this wasn't a figure that was designed by the Horseman, I absolutely have to give props to whoever designed this figure. It's everything I like out of Super 7 figures. It's just big and imposing. The paint on the regular version is very exceptional for Super 7. In the glow-in-the-dark version, you know I'm a sucker for the glow-in-the-dark figures. I've talked about it a million times on this channel, but there's also just something about a glow-in-the-dark figure when you hit it with these weird paint apps, like the glow-in-the-dark Slash figure with a watermelon paint scheme. I love that figure even when it's not glowing, and it's the same for this figure. I love the metallic blue with the yellow. It just works so well. My only nitpick for this figure, I wish that he would have been a blue glow figure. They've only given us 2 blue glow figures, the Baxter Stockman and the Foot Soldier, and I feel like this was a huge missed opportunity to give us another one. I'm guessing the green glow powder is probably cheaper, so there's probably a good chance we're never getting a blue one again from them. And I guess I do have another problem with the glow in the dark version, and it's that he doesn't come with a cape. And I didn't even realize it until I went to go make this list, and I grabbed the regular version. I was like, wait a minute, the glow in the dark version doesn't have a cape, because I've been handling him every night because he's been my go-to glow-in-the-dark figure before I go to bed. So that just threw me off when I grabbed the regular version and realized the glow-in-the-dark one didn't have a cape. So even though I have 2 pretty big nitpicks with that figure, I still love it so much, and the fact that it can compete with the regular version just shows you how much bias I really do have with the glow-in-the-dark figures. But again, it's my list. I can do whatever the hell I want. So I'm going to give both these guys the dual 5 and 6 spots, because I just can't decide which one I like more. Objectively, I probably do like the regular one a little bit more, but like I said, I feel like it's going to be a while before I pick another figure that I like more for the glow-in-the-dark figures. And the glow-in-the-dark figures are my favorite Super 7 figures. Coming in at number 4 is the NECA Last Ronin Foot Soldier. I'm pretty sure this guy came in around 7th on my mid-year list, and it's a figure that I've just appreciated more and more as time's gone on. It leapfrogged a ton of figures I had ranked higher than it, and the only negative I have about this figure is that it's just a foot soldier, so it's a character that I just don't really care about that much. Like, how much can you really care about a cannon fodder robot? But that being said, I think this might be NECA's best figure of all time. It has some of the best paint apps, some of the best sculpting detail. You know, it just really looks like they're putting a lot of extra effort in these comic book figures, and it definitely shows. I think the Mirage line and the Ronin line are their two objectively best lines right now, and I just wish I had more space to dedicate to the Last Ronin. I only have one shelf, and I can't really expand upon that, so I can't really buy a ton of these guys. I have 2 of them, and I have 3 Sinjas, so I mean, I just can't pack that shelf with army builders when there's a lot of other cool characters that I like. But if you have not picked up this figure, it is a very high recommend for me. Like I said, I think it might be objectively NECA's best figure of all time. I'm pretty sure this guy's actually on sale at Big Bad Toy Store right now. Even though it only hits at number 4 on this list, it's definitely my favorite NECA figure of the year. Excellent, excellent figure. I just really don't have enough good things to say about it. Coming in at number 3 is Mezco Casey Jones. And this is a figure that I had really been chomping at the bit for ever since it was teased. Up to this point, my favorite Casey is probably the NECA Mirage red shirt version. And now I think I can safely say this is now my definitive Casey Jones figure. What I like about the Mezco figures is they're kind of doing their own thing. They're pulling little bits and pieces from a bunch of different iterations, and it just works for me. The only other Mezco figures I own outside of him and the Turtles is a Cable figure, and a lot of his soft goods are covered up by armor pieces. So I'd say this is kind of the first Mezco figure that I've gotten that is like really what Mezco is all about, the soft goods. And I've always been very indifferent on that. Like, I've always joked soft goods are for dolls, but without a doubt, I really do appreciate them here. The sweatpants are kind of a little goofy, but as far as the shirt and the jacket go, I feel like they just absolutely nailed those. I really like this head sculpt. They definitely pulled from Mirage a lot for that. The mask kind of has its own details, but I would say the mullet is like a direct pull from the Mirage version of Casey. This golf bag's really awesome, comes with all the right accessories, and even though this figure was outrageously expensive, it just filled a void that I've been looking to fill. And that's really just getting my ultimate versions of characters, and that's something that I'm really going to focus on going forward. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later down the line, because that's not what this video is about. But over the last year, I've started dabbling in import figures more, been buying more premium things. You definitely do get more out of these premium figures, and I definitely appreciate it a lot. So great figure, hard to come by now. I know there's people that are still getting it on the wait list, which is awesome. These figures are definitely not for everybody, but I greatly appreciate them. So my runner-up for favorite figure of the year, coming in at the number 2 spot, is the Fury Toys / Rage Toys Autumn figure, aka the Not Donatello figure. And I'm pretty sure I had this guy ranked 3rd halfway through the year. I'm pretty sure Super 7 Wingnut was my runner-up at that point. But without a doubt, these are figures that just do not lose their charm for me. When I got the Not Leo figure a couple years ago, that was one of those figures that I'm not going to say I didn't really expect anything out of it because everybody was hyping it up a lot, but it was one that I got in hand and I couldn't really believe how much I liked it once I got it. You know, at this point, 12 scale is without a doubt the definitive scale for me, and I don't really know what scale these guys fall in. They're a lot bigger than 1/18th, but definitely a lot smaller than 1/12th scale. But I really like them. They're almost in that 4.5-inch Playmates style scale. So that's a scale that I'm familiar with, especially when it comes to Turtles. And there's just so much fun you can have with these figures. They come with all the different looks. I have my Leo and Donnie in the samurai look right now, but that'll probably change up when I get the Not Mikey figure, because for whatever reason they didn't give him a samurai helmet. I'm hoping that does come down the line later. And even though this figure just didn't hit quite as hard as the Leo did, it's definitely one of my favorite figures of all time now, along with that Not Leo figure. The articulation isn't great on these figures, but it's decent. The paint apps are amazing, and the attention to detail is just incredible with these things, especially at the smaller scale. I'm pretty sure you can still get him on 5K Toys right now. Right now, I think the Leo is the only thing you might have to hunt down and pay a little bit more for, but you can get the Not Donnie, you can get the Not Mikey right now, and the Not Bebop, and probably the Not Splinter as well. Very excited to see what the Not Raph looks like once that gets announced. Definitely my most anticipated turtle, but great figures. The line that I'm definitely the most excited about, and I don't even care that they're going as slow as they are with these figures because it just makes me appreciate them even more when I get them. Alright, so coming in at my top spot, probably not going to be a surprise to anybody, but it's my original release Mezco Bros. And just like with the Casey figure, these scratched an itch that I've been trying to scratch ever since I got into collecting. If I had to get rid of everything tomorrow and I could only keep one set of turtles, it would without a doubt be the original Playmates figures. But if we're talking about modern figures, it is hands down this set. This set has now surpassed the SH Figuarts as my favorite set of modern turtles. Unless Metacom / Mafex were to do figures, I can't imagine there's going to be anything that comes along anytime soon that's going to trump this set for me. I know there's a lot of companies that are starting to put out some premium turtles, and I think that's going to kind of be the thing going forward. But after getting this set, I don't think I'm going to ever need another set of premium turtles again. This is my preferred design for the turtles. They borrow very heavily from the Mirage Turtles, which is one of my favorite designs, and then I would say they cross over heavily with the Playmates action figures. And to me, that's just a combination for a damn near perfect turtle. Now, clearly nothing is perfect, but like I said, these figures just hit all the boxes for me. I like my turtles a little bit shorter and squattier. I don't like them big and beefy like superheroes. And if you like that aesthetic, there's nothing wrong with that, and you're probably about to get a great set of turtles coming out in the not too distant future as well. But like I said, this was just the set for me. As soon as they showed off the prototypes at Comic-Con or Toy Fair or whatever it was, that's when I finally pulled the trigger on this set. I was on the fence about it when I saw the digital renders, but once I saw the actual figures, like I said, they just blew me away. And then getting them in hand, it just took it even further. Clearly, articulation could be a little bit better. I don't think that's something Mezco is really known for, but the paint, the sculpting, the details on these figures, everything is just spot on. I went with the Playmate style head sculpts because again, that's just the vibes I get when I see these turtles, and I think they just fit the best. The whited out eyes is always one of my favorite aesthetics when it comes to cartoons or comics. Whenever the character's eyes go white, you always know shit's about to hit the fan, and it definitely just gives characters a little bit more edge. I would have to say this is probably one of the most reviewed sets of turtles of all time, so I really don't think I'm going to tell you anything nobody's ever told you before, but without a doubt, this set of turtles is my favorite purchase from the last year. I now have my definitive set of turtles. These guys now live in my living room where my SH Figuarts turtles used to live, and like I said, I just have a hard time believing there's going to be anything that comes out that replaces these guys as my now favorite modern turtles. I know these designs definitely aren't for everybody, but like I said, they just work almost as perfectly as can be for me. Alright you guys, so here's one final look at my top 20 figures, plus the screw looses, which I count more as an accessory than a figure. I'm just going to say this one more time, I definitely think 2024 was the best year of figures we've ever had for the modern era. So many great figures, so many fun surprises. You know, at this point, everybody had pretty much given up hope that Tatsu was ever coming, and we got him. Super 7, like always, was very hit or miss. They put out some great figures, then they also put out some very disappointing figures, and NECA was just kind of always right where they are. Very consistent, very reliable, tons of figures coming out. We'll see how their little shipping controversy affects them going forward. So let me know what you guys think about this list. Let me know what your top 10 figures of the year were, and then just a couple shout outs before I end this video. Thank you to my buddy Ben who got me this awesome cardboard cutout. If you guys have seen my collection tours, I have some cardboard cutouts from my childhood, so just awesome to get another one of those to go in my collection. And then he also got me these TMNT plushes as well, so next time I do my collection tour, I'm going to do a running count for how many things that guy's gifted me TMNT related for my collection. So thank you very much, Ben. Greatly appreciated for all that stuff. Shout out to my buddy Josh who got me these awesome independently made comic books. Brian Moss produced these. This issue 0, which has the X-Men homage cover, it's an anthology series. Every page is done by a different artist and it's just a self-contained story. Think kind of like a bunch of comic strips thrown together. Some of them are just one-page splashes, others have multiple frames. The art's really fun, it's all over the place, really cool book. And then there's also the TMNT Grand Design, and this is paying tribute to the late Ed Piskor, RIP. Him and Jim Rugg did some Grand Design books for Marvel. Ed did the X-Men and Jim did the Hulk one. So this is kind of the TMNT version of that. It's basically kind of just like one big long story that covers the Turtles from start to finish. Kind of goes over their history, the different iterations. And again, every page is done by a different artist, which is really cool. And it also came with these 2 prints, which are really awesome. So again, Josh is another guy that's contributed a lot of awesome things to my collection. So again, thank you very much, Josh, for everything you've ever done for me. And last but not least, my girlfriend's brother and kids got me this awesome metal poster. It's from that company Display, who sponsored a ton of different YouTubers. I've never gotten anything from them, but this thing is pretty sweet. Comes with stickable magnets to put on the wall to make putting it up super easy. So I'm really excited to get this on my door. So thank you guys very much for that Christmas present. So that's all I got for you guys for this one. Thank you so much for sticking around during my hiatus. Again, I know I pretty much say this at the end of every video, but I only got out like 8 videos last year. And this year, I really am going to try to get back to more regular production again. Starting to feel a lot better, just starting to feel a lot more motivated. And I'm sure someday I'll kind of talk about why I took such a long hiatus. So next up will be my annual collection tour. So hopefully I'll have that video out for you guys in the next couple weeks. So take it easy, be safe, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.